Hello everyone. This is going to be Intermediate Algebra 6.1 and Chapter 6 is over simplifying rational expressions, and y'all know I'm a super nerd, so when I say I really enjoy this lesson, I'm sorry. I enjoy this chapter because I look at it as little puzzles that I get to complete, but it is challenging, so we're going to just dive into this, but we are on the home stretch. Y'all only have 5 sections left of this semester, and you are going to make it. 5 sections and a test, but you're going to make it. So let me go ahead and start sharing my document camera, and let's get this on the road. Okay, so on these first ones, they're just asking, find the domain of the rational function. So our domain is going to be everything where this is true and real, and there's one thing that's going to make this undefined, and it would be undefined if we had a 0 down here. So t is a real number and t cannot equal 0 because we can't have the bottom of a fraction being 0 because then it would be undefined. So keep that in mind because that's what the next few ones are like as well. So find the domain of the rational function. 7 subtract x equals 0, because we want to know what's going to make that bottom be 0. We want to know what's going to make it undefined because that's what x cannot equal. So we'd bring our 7 over, so we'd have negative x equals negative 7, and when we divide by our negative 1 on both of them, we get x equals 7, and that is what x cannot equal. Another way you can do that is 7 subtract x equals 0. What is x? So 7 subtract 7 is 0. Find the domain of the rational function. On this one, we have x cubed plus 8x squared plus 7x. So now we're going to have to use all that stuff we just learned, and we're going to have to factor this and find everything that's going to make it 0. So the first thing I can do with this formula or expression is factor out an x. So I have x times x squared plus 8x plus 7 because I factored out one of the x's. Now that I'm going to go ahead and factor again, so my factors of 7 that add to get 8 would be 7 and 1. So x times x plus 7 times x plus 1 equals 0. And I'm going to make each one of these equal to 0. So I have x equals 0. That's one of my answers. X plus 7 equals 0. So I'd have x equals negative 7 here. And then x plus 1 equals 0. And I'd subtract that 1. So x equals negative 1. And always keep in mind, this is going to be your little cheat. The degree is how many answers you have most of the time. So since I had x cubed, I have 3 answers because my exponent was 3 on the bottom, and that's what we were solving for. I have 1, 2, 3 answers. Find the domain of the rational function. Remember, this is the difference of 2 squares. There's a lot of recalling you're going to have to do on these next sections, not just this one. So don't hesitate to send me an email if you're at a point and you're just stumped, because that is why I am here. So the difference of 2 squares is x subtract 5 times x plus 5. So our answers would be negative 5 and positive 5. Okay, that may be all of our domain problems. All right, these next ones I nerd out on because I am a nerd. Simplify the rational expression. And what we have to do on all of these is factor them out and then cancel out what we can. So this top is that difference of 2 squares. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to x minus 8 times x plus 8. And I'm going to draw an arrow. And then this is 8 plus x. But since it's 8 plus x, I can go ahead and rearrange that because this is positive x and positive 8 to x plus 8. These are the same things. I didn't change anything. I factored both of these. The bottom one, though, I rearranged. Now that anything divided by itself is 1. And I probably don't need to mark stuff out when I go to put this online. Oh, that's going to be fun. Okay. So you have x subtract x. Maybe I'll highlight instead of marking it out. Okay. This one, here we go to factor it. We're going to have 7, because 7 goes into 7 and 21. So I'd have y subtract 21 divided by 7 is 3 over 6, 6y. 6 goes into 18 3 times. Since I have y subtract 3 over y subtract 3, anything divided by itself is 1. So those would cancel out, and I'd be left with 7 6. I want you to keep in mind when you're doing this lesson is our goal is to cancel stuff out. We want to cancel things out. They want us to simplify it, so they don't want it to be the same. We're going to factor and cancel. So like when I found this one, I knew this one needed to look like it. So I just have to figure out how do I make it look like this. So our goal is to cancel. Right here, on one of these, we're going to have to factor out a -1. Because the top is x subtract 4. So if I divided this by a -1 here, if I factored out a -1, 4 divided by -1 would be -4. Negative x divided by -1 would be positive x. And then I could rewrite this as x subtract 4. So I'd have -1 times x subtract 4. Then these two would cancel, and I'd be left with -1. Because this would have been 1 over -1. I really like this stuff. That's the problem. Okay. Simplify the rational expression. So this one, we're going to have to factor, like what we've been doing. So I have factors of 2. So 2 and 1, and then 18. I have 18 and 1, 9 and 2, and 6 and 3. And I need them to subtract to get 9. So 6 times 2 is 12. 3 times 1 is 3. 12 subtract 3 is 9. So I know I have 2x and x because it's the only factors of 2. And then my factors of 18 that I'm going to use are 6 and 3. And so I have to have 2 times 6. 3 times 1, and then I want my bigger to be negative and my smaller to be positive. By the bottom factors of 18 that add to get 9, it's still going to be 6 and 3. So we have x, and we're going to have 6 and 3, and our bigger will be negative, our smaller will be positive. These would cancel. So I'd be left with 2x plus 3 for x plus 3. And these don't cancel out because of this 2 here. If it was 2x plus 6, we'd have something else, but it's 2x plus 3 over x plus 3. All right, on this one, you have to remember that cube formula. So you have to know, and there's the paper that has this, but it's going to follow the formula a subtract b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. This is how you factor a cube. There's paper over it. On this one, I'd have x and 7. So I'd have x subtract 7 times x squared plus 7x plus 49. All over, I can factor a 4 out here. 4 goes into 4x 1 time. The x is left over. 4 goes into 28 7 times. Those would cancel out. There's no factors of 49 that add to get 7. So x squared plus 7x plus 49. Know when you do your cube, when you multiply out your cubes, this part is never going to factor more. So that might be a handy note to have somewhere. Okay, we have 2x squared subtract 3x subtract 2. So on this one, factors of 2 and 2 that subtract to get 3. 2 times 2 is 4, so we're going to have 2x and x. And then we're going to multiply this 2x by 2 to get that 4, so this one would be 1. I want negative here and positive here. All right, on the bottom here, we're going to factor by grouping because there's 4 terms. If there's ever 4 terms, just know you're going to go to grouping. So out of that first group, I'm going to be able to factor out a 2x squared. So I'm going to write this down here. So I'd have 2x squared. 4x cubed divided by 2x squared would be 2x. 2x squared divided by 2x would be plus 1. That's the same thing, so plus 1 times 2x. So when I factor this, I'll have 2x plus 1 times what's left, 2x squared plus 1. And those would cancel. And I did it again with my pen, I'm sorry. Over 2x squared plus 1. Let me write this over here real quick. X minus 2 over 2x squared plus 1. All right, there's the first 10. I'm going to go ahead and stop this video so we can start a new one. So let's go to stop share.